Business Hour on OFM.
It's your Business Hour on OFM, the sound of your life. I'm Ulebogeng Motse. Now, towards the tail end of last week, we spoke about how it's important for business owners to better educate themselves regarding intellectual property laws in order to understand how these assets can be owned and monetized. We were speaking to ENS Africa's Waldo Steyn. Well, tonight we're sitting down with another ENS expert, Gerard du Toit. He's a senior associate in the intellectual property department of that law firm, and he's going to be explaining, well, what is a trademark and why is it considered one of the most valuable assets that a business can have? Here's that conversation. Good evening, Gerard. What is a trademark?
Simply put, as far as I'm concerned, a trademark is the most valuable asset that any business owns. And I say that because your trademark is your badge of origin that distinguishes your goods or services from those of competitors. So it's that name that you are putting out into the market to draw consumers to your particular product that you are selling or the service that you are rendering. That, in a nutshell, is what a trademark is.
Right. So what is a patent and where do the two then differ?
So a patent is a different form of intellectual property that can also be formally protected. And so a patent protects an idea that you've come up with. And as long as that idea complies with specific requirements, then you can potentially be granted a patent over that idea. A patent effectively is a 20-year monopoly that you are granted over that specific idea. And so it's limited in term to 20 years, whereas a trademark is perpetual and you can renew a trademark every 10 years, you renew it, and it can go on potentially forever.
How does a trademark protect your brand?
What we strongly recommend is that people formally apply to register their trademark. So through the Companies and Intellectual Property Commission, or CIPC, they administer the trademark registration process in South Africa. And so to formally protect your trademark, you would apply for protection, and the trademark then goes through a legal process, and ultimately what you're trying to obtain from that process is a registered trademark, and that then gives you a registered statutory right that is enforceable in terms of the provision of the Trademarks Act. So you obtain that formal registered right, which then becomes an asset in your business. It's also easier to enforce against third parties if they're infringing on your rights.
What are some of the biggest mistakes that companies make according to, your experience and research?
Simply put, I think the biggest mistake that many companies in this country make is that they don't seek that formal registered protection. Sometimes we get clients that come to us and say, well, no, it's registered the company name, so that gives us protection. And while a company name registration gives you some rights, it doesn't give you the strong suite of statutory protection that you require through the Trademarks Act. So the biggest mistake that people make is they just don't register their trademarks. So they'll spend a whole bunch of money on marketing and advertising and social media and all that kind of good stuff, which is important, and then they skip the step of actually just applying to get their actual trademark registered through CIPC. So that's a big mistake we see. We also see people that try and either do things themselves or don't necessarily go to specialist legal firms that provide these services. It is quite a niche field, intellectual property, and we obviously strongly recommend that people, need to seek proper specialist advice to help them with this process. The other big mistake that people often make is that they don't do what we call trademark clearance searches. So that is where if you have a new product or service that you want to offer, before you just go ahead and launch that into the market, we feel it's critical that you go and check that no one else has got a registered trademark that is potentially similar to the name that you want to use. Because if that is the case and you launch your product, you could get a nasty letter of demand from someone saying, well, you're infringing my registered right. So we often see people that just don't do proper clearance searches, and obviously that can have very costly results. I mean, if you launch a new product and you spend thousands of rands on your marketing and then suddenly you have to change your name, then obviously that can have massive implications for you, and it can also be very damaging to your reputation. And if you're potentially a big company and you launch a new product and you get accused of stealing something from a smaller company, it can have repercussions on social media and for your reputation. companies need to be very cautious when they are dealing with third parties. So someone comes to you and says, I've got this great new idea, or, can I help you with this? Or let's talk about collaboration. You need to be very careful in those interactions that you don't end up in a situation 6 months or a year down the line where perhaps you haven't gone into a relationship with that party, and then suddenly you want to do something similar and they pop up and say, well, I pitched this to you a year ago and now you're just copying it. So it's just to be cautious around those interactions and make sure that they are handled properly and clearly defined in terms of what was discussed. Then also just a caution in terms of companies that are developing new products or new services and things, just to make sure that, if you are potentially looking in the market or you've seen a product that you like and you want to do something similar, contact specialist legal help and make sure that you are okay, that you're not going to run into problems of being accused of copying, or worse, that you're going to run into statutory problems for that. And really the big message there is that if you're unsure, just ask for help. It's out there, and people must just reach out to get that help.
That was my conversation with Gerard du Toit. He is a senior associate in the intellectual property department of law firm ENS Africa. There's one takeaway that I certainly got from that conversation. Always reach out to a legal expert, especially on this particular issue. Now, if you missed that conversation, you can catch it on the business blog on ofm.co.za.
The Business Hour on OFM.